A person stood upright and looked completely motionless. Arms hung, the head stayed level. From the outside it seemed simple, like the body had found a stable setting and locked it in. But that calm image hid a problem. Gravity never paused, the ground never stopped pushing back, and the body never truly held a posture the way a statue did. Inside that quiet stance, the body already worked. Tiny groups of muscle fibers tightened, then eased, then tightened again, too small and too quick to notice by eye. They acted like constant corrections, nudging joints and shifting tension just enough to keep the person from tipping. What looked like stillness from a distance had been a moving target, balanced again and again in real time. Even the simplest act of standing had demanded constant effort, not as a strain, but as a steady background hum. If those microscopic adjustments had stopped, the change had come fast. Sway would have grown, the body would have drifted, and a fall would have followed. The surprise was not that people sometimes trembled. The surprise was that they trembled all the time, just too subtly to see. That hidden activity had a name. It got called microtremors, tiny involuntary muscle contractions that happened constantly, even when a person felt completely relaxed. They did not wait for effort or movement. They kept going during a quiet stance, during a pause, even while resting. The body did not switch on and off in big steps. It adjusted in fine, continuous pulses. Microtremors stayed small enough to escape notice. Most people never saw them in a mirror and never felt them in their hands. They only assumed trembling started when something went wrong. But these microcontractions belonged to normal control. They were the background hum of muscle work. Without them, a limb did not hold a position with the same steadiness. The still body drifted. Shivering looked similar, but it played a different role. Shivering produced larger, more obvious shakes, and it usually arrived with cold or stress, when the body pushed hard for heat or quick readiness. Microtremors did not announce themselves like that. They stayed quieter and more constant. They did not mean danger. They meant upkeep, a steady stream of tiny corrections that never really stopped. Then a new player entered the picture, the nervous system. Muscles did not just decide to twitch on their own, they followed orders. Even in a quiet stand, the brain and spinal cord had sent a steady stream of tiny signals down the nerves, telling small groups of fibers to tighten, then ease off. That flow never fully stopped. It acted like constant steering, keeping the body from tipping past the point of return. Those orders traveled through motor units, the basic teams that made muscle work. One motor nerve connected to a bundle of muscle fibers, and when it fired, that whole team pulled together. But the system rarely kept the same team switched on for long. It rotated. One set engaged, another rested. Then they traded places. The result looked like a faint shimmer in the muscle, but it spread the load across many fibers. This cycling mattered because holding a posture asked for endurance, not a single burst of strength. If the same fibers stayed active non-stop, they would have tired quickly, weakened, and let the joint drift. So the nervous system kept swapping which motor units carried the work, moment by moment. It created tiny rises and falls in tension, microtremors, so the overall force stayed steady. That was how still avoided collapse. Those tiny trembles had not just happened because the nervous system fired in a messy way. They followed rules. Each moment muscles had been measured from the inside, as if they carried their own sensors. When a muscle lengthened even slightly, the message went back up the nerves and a correction came down. The tremor had been the visible trace of constant checking and adjusting. One set of sensors sat inside the muscle itself, muscle spindles. They reported stretch and the speed of that stretch, fast enough to catch a sway before it turned into a stumble. The spinal cord then sent a quick reflex signal back to tighten the muscle. It did not wait for conscious control. The result looked like jitter, but it worked like a feedback loop. Another sensor watched force instead of length. The Golgi tendon organ, embedded where muscle met tendon. When tension rose too high, it sent a warning that eased the pull, protecting the tissue and smoothing the output. Together, these signals had made microtremors purposeful, tightening a little, relaxing a little, then tightening again. Posture stayed up because the system kept renegotiating tension second by second. Another partner joined the balancing act, and it sat deeper than muscles and tendons. Inside the inner ear, tiny sensors tracked head motion in real time. They did not wait for a stumble, a slight tilt, a small turn, even a quick stop already registered. That information fed into the body's control circuits, and the microtremors shifted. The goal stayed simple: keep the head steady. These inner ear signals mattered because the head carried the eyes. If the head drifted, vision blurred, and balance weakened fast. So the vestibular system pushed rapid corrections. It did not move the body in big, visible steps. It nudged muscle activity in tiny bursts, adjusting which fibers fired and when. Microtremors changed their timing and direction, like constant small edits, keeping gaze locked while the world moved. This meant trembling was not just a local fix inside one muscle. It became a whole-body negotiation centered on the head. When the inner ear sensed acceleration, it triggered reflexes that tightened some muscles and eased others, often before awareness caught up. The microtremor pattern shifted again, spreading stability down the neck, shoulders, and trunk. The result looked like stillness. Underneath, it stayed busy. The surprising part was that the trembling did not stay the same all the time. It scaled up or down depending on what the body needed. During a simple relaxed hold, the signals stayed modest, almost like background noise. But when a task demanded precision, pinching, aiming, threading something tiny, the microtremors grew stronger. They also grew more organized. Small muscles stopped taking turns casually and started working in tighter patterns. That shift mattered because precision was not the same as force. The hand did not need to crush anything. It needed to hover, align, and stop at exactly the right spot. So the nervous system pushed for finer control, and the muscles answered with faster, more coordinated corrections. The tremor became a tool, not a mistake. Tiny adjustments stacked one after another. The closer the target, the more the corrections piled up. Then came the twist. Give the body support, and the trembling eased off. Rest the elbow on a table, brace the wrist, lean against a wall. Suddenly the system did not have to fight gravity and balance alone. The microtremors quieted because fewer emergency fixes were needed. The job changed, so the signal changed. Microtremor did not just reveal effort, it revealed how much the body had to manage moment by moment. The longer a muscle held a position, the less quiet it stayed. At first, the tiny corrections stayed small, almost hidden inside the effort, but fatigue crept in. Energy stores dropped. Waste products from repeated contractions started to pile up. The same simple posture suddenly cost more, and because the body still had to keep balance, it leaned harder on those rapid, automatic adjustments. As metabolites built up, the muscle fibers responded less cleanly. They produced force in a more uneven way, and the nervous system had to compensate. Motor control slipped from precise to rough, so the body cycled more motor units, faster and with less finesse, just to hold the line. What used to be a smooth, nearly invisible tremor turned into a pattern with wider swings and clearer pulses. This shift changed what trembling meant over time. It stopped being a faint background signal and started acting like a warning sign. The posture did not fail all at once. It wobbled first. Each oscillation showed the system working harder to correct small errors it would have erased earlier. Fatigue made stability more expensive, and the price got paid in motion, a steadier stance, kept alive by more noticeable shaking. Even without fatigue, trembling could suddenly feel louder. The shift often came from the state of the nervous system, not the muscle itself. Under stress, the brain stayed on alert, and it pushed harder down the same pathways that already kept posture steady. More drive went to the motor units. The baseline microtremor did not need to change much to become noticeable. Perception changed because the system ran hotter. Caffeine added another twist. It raised arousal, sharpened attention, and made the body more reactive to small signals. With that extra stimulation, motor commands arrived more readily and reflex loops responded faster. The result looked like a stronger shake, even though it still rode on the same tiny contractions that existed all along. The tremor became easier to trigger and harder to ignore, especially during steady holds. Adrenaline amplified it further. When it surged, the body prepared for action. Heart rate rose, muscles primed, and the nervous system turned up sensitivity. That combination increased small oscillations in tension, and it made normal microtremors easier to see in the hands, the jaw, or the voice. It did not mean something broke. It meant the control system got pushed into a higher gain mode, and small noise showed up. By this point, trembling had stopped sounding like a mistake. It had sounded like management. Most people carried a faint, constant microtremor that stayed small, fast, and easy to miss, even when the body worked hard to hold still. But a line existed. When shaking grew obvious, repeated, or hard to control, it no longer behaved like routine posture maintenance. It started to look like a symptom. Everyday microtremors had tended to show up as a fine quiver that came and went with effort, fatigue, stress, or caffeine, then settled again. Clinical tremors followed different rules. Essential tremor often appeared during action, like holding a cup, writing, or keeping the arms outstretched, and it could run in families. Parkinsonian tremor more often emerged at rest, commonly in one hand first, and it eased during movement. The warning signs had not been mystery. A tremor that steadily worsened, interfered with eating or writing, or appeared on one side of the body deserved attention. So did new shaking paired with slowness, stiffness, changes in balance, or a softening of facial expression. A doctor could sort harmless amplification from something that required treatment, and simple tests and a careful history often clarified what the shaking actually meant. What once looked like perfect stillness got redefined by measurement. With EMG, tiny electrodes picked up electrical bursts that the eye never caught. A muscle that seemed quiet still fired in quick little packets, then paused, then fired again. The trace on a screen showed it plainly. The body never held a pose like a statue. It managed it like a system that constantly made small corrections. Then the same story left the lab. Wearables tracked motion and muscle activity in everyday life, turning a standing still moment into data. Small shifts in pressure, sway, and vibration lined up with those EMG bursts. Patterns emerged. Some tremor rose with effort, some faded with support, some changed with fatigue or stress. The microcontractions stopped being a mystery sensation. They became a signal that could be mapped and compared. In controlled studies, researchers tested balance tasks, precision holds, and quiet rest, and the results kept pointing the same way. Posture stayed stable because it never stayed fixed. The nervous system adjusted tension second by second, recruiting and releasing fibers, sharing load, responding to tiny errors before they grew. The old idea of stillness fell away. What remained was negotiation, an ongoing agreement between gravity, sensory feedback, and muscle.